everyone! It's finally starting to get cold where I am, so I decided to take a thrifted sweater and make a hat and mitten set. Of course, I'm going to show you guys how you can make some of your own, and you guys can watch me stumble through trying to make something without all of my normal craft tools like my craft scissors and even my own sewing machine. So, let's get started! You'll need a sweater, matching yarn, needle and matching thread, 2 buttons, a pin, measuring tape, tailor's chalk, and you'll probably also want a bigger yarn needle. I ended up not using one because the eye of my sewing needle was big enough to thread the yarn. A lot of sewing happens for this tutorial, and while you can hand sew, I prefer using a sewing machine. For this whole project, I used a zigzag stitch so it can still stretch a bit. First, I'll show you how to make some convertible mittens. Turn the sweater inside out and lay the sleeve flat. Put your hand down on the sweater, positioning it so your wrist is on the ribbing at the end of the sleeve, and your pinky is against the edge that doesn't have a sewn seam. And so your thumb is kind of under your fingers, like so. For this step, you're going to ignore your fingers, just pretend like they're not there. And mark next to your wrist and trace around your thumb. This is kind of hard to show, but at the base of your thumb, mark a straight line from there to the edge of your hand. Carefully cut around the mark you made, giving yourself a 1/4 inch seam allowance and only cutting through one side of the sleeve. Flip the sleeve over and place your hand, also flipped, on the sleeve. Trace around your hand again, up to about 1/2 inch above your knuckle, and mark a straight line across again. Cut the rest of this piece out. Put your hand down on the sleeve like so, with your thumb straight down, and trace around, and again stop about 1/2 inch past your knuckles. Cut this part out with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Up where the sleeve still has 2 layers, lay your hand on it like so, and trace around your fingers, and about 1/2 inch past your knuckles, mark the straight line. Give yourself a 1/4 inch seam allowance and cut both layers out. You can use these pieces to cut out the pieces for the other mitten. Just make sure you cut out the mirrored version. Flip the pieces over before you mark and cut them, because this gives you the mirrored image, which should match your other hand. Now here's where I messed up one of my mittens. I sewed everything in the wrong order, and it led to looking really weird. I went in a different order for the second one and it turned out way better. So obviously these are the instructions that I'm going to be giving you guys, so your mittens should be fine. On one of the top mitten pieces and the small thumb piece, fold the straight edge and sew it down. Pin the other top piece onto the main part of the mitten and sew the straight sides together. Make sure to do right sides facing each other. Place the small thumb piece on, lining it up with the thumb. These 2 edges are the important ones that need to line up. If you have any extra fabric hanging over a little on this side, then you can just cut that off later. Sew these 2 pieces together, stopping at the base of the thumb right here. And now you can take the time to cut off the extra fabric. Flip the flap up and then flip that whole piece over. Place the other top piece in place. Pin all the edges and sew together. Put it on and flip the top off. Pull it back a little bit to see where the top hits your wrist. Mark that spot, take off the mitten, and sew the button. Then cut a loop of yarn that fits the button and sew it to the top of the mitten. Repeat this again for the second mitten, and you're done. I had plenty of sweater to work with, so I decided to show you 2 examples of hats. For the first kind, measure your head. Subtract 1 inch from that measurement and cut out a piece of sweater that's as wide as that measurement and about 12 inches tall. Fold it in half and then in half again. On the side with the fold and 2 raw edges, measure in 1/2 inch at the top, and then measure 3 inches down. Connect these marks with a straight line. On the folded side, measure down 6 inches. Connect this to the top mark in a gentle curve like so. Cut these parts off. Unfold. Fold it in half again, right sides together, pin the sides, and sew it up. Don't forget this little bit on the other side. Now it should look like this. Line up the raw edges on top, pin together, and sew. Flip it out and you're done. This makes kind of a tall hat, so I like to flip the ribbing up when I wear it. Before we start on this other one, you'll need to make a pom-pom. To make one, cut a length of yarn about 8 inches, place it between your middle and ring finger, and loosely wrap some more yarn around your fingers about 50 times. Bring the small length of yarn around and tie it tight. Pull it off your hand and cut the loops. Then, while holding the long strings, trim it into a sphere. Set it aside while you make the hat. Like before, measure your head and subtract 1 inch. Cut out a piece of sweater that's as wide as that measurement and about 12 inches tall. Sew along the top raw edge to seal it. This will help keep it from potentially unraveling. Fold it in half, right sides together, and sew up the edge. Cut a length of yarn about 1 to 2 feet long. Thread it in and out along the top of the hat. I'm doing this along the right side of the hat, but you should be doing this while it's still flipped inside out. Anyway, once you get all the way around, pull the yarn and tie it tight. Flip it out. Thread the 2 long strings from the pom-pom into the small hole on top and tie it to the extra yarn on the inside. Trim the yarn, and you're done. Here they are, all finished. I hope you all enjoyed this week's video. If you did, please leave a like. If you want to see more, then feel free to subscribe. I post art videos every Tuesday and DIY videos every Thursday. You can follow me on Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, or Pinterest, and I'll leave the information to those down below. If you have any questions or suggestions for future videos, please leave a comment down below, and I'll see you next week.